The State Department says it takes full responsibility for hastily altering and then presenting a map of Africa at a global AIDS conference that mislabeled every single country it highlighted. Attendees shared photos of the incorrect map online. Coastal countries like Nigeria, Mozambique, and Cote d'Ivoire were all landlocked and in the wrong locations. Other countries' borders were misrepresented. An analysis by Reuters found a watermark in the map image that suggests it was made with OpenAI.
Okay. I mean, okay. So this is what incompetence looks like. All right. So on the national stage at an international conference, somebody hastily threw together a map using OpenAI because this is what happens when you fire all the professionals in administration. This is what happens when Marco Rubio and Elon Musk came in and decided that thinking was woke and got rid of all the people with brains and hired a bunch of kids who know nothing about anything. And some clown in our State Department used OpenAI to quickly create a map for an international conference. Look, folks, I've been to these conferences. I was an Army officer for 22 years. Okay. You don't just hastily throw together a PowerPoint for an international conference, not knowing where the countries are in Africa. And it goes to all the things we've seen for a year and a half now, a clown show of incompetence. And look, we thought Trump 1 was bad. Trump 2 has been beyond measure of stupidity and corruption and chaos and lies and incompetence. And I think I already said that once. And I want to go to that, but we got such an important conversation today, but it's actually going to go a little bit more seriously than just the clown show of AI. But I want to set you up that way that we've got people talk about AI, using AI as a tool for preparation. And then you got this president, and now things get serious because we're at war with Iran and our service members are in harm's way. And we've lost quite a few lately. And this is what's happened. We know now that our enemies, China and Russia, are helping Iran. Where do you think they got a lot of these weapons? Where do they think they sell their weapons to? It's Iranian drones raining down in Ukraine. So recently it came out, Zelensky and others, including the Secretary of War, have said that China is helping Iran and Russia. Watch Trump on the airplane just there.
Zelensky says that Russia is giving Iran satellite imagery of U.S. bases in the Gulf to help them target. What can you do about that?
Well, we'll find out if that's true. I'll ask Putin about it. We'll find out. Hasn't that much impact because we've knocked the hell out of it. When you think, if that's the case, look, they gave Venezuela a lot of equipment. Venezuela had all Russian equipment. How did that work out? Not too good. So they may be giving, but if they are, it hasn't worked out because they have no army, they have no air force, they have no navy, they have no nothing. So it hasn't worked out. But I don't think they've been doing it. Certainly not at a high level. And if they have, it has been very unimpactful.
Holding that word, unimpactful. That was July 20th. That was 2 days ago, right? Okay. Unimpactful. I'm going to pull myself out and let you watch this. And I'm going to be honest with you guys. I am a veteran of Iraq. I want you to watch this video. And I actually don't do trigger warnings, but one for... That was impactful. And that's an attack on our air base in Jordan that ended up killing at least 4 of our service members. And they specifically targeted, now we know, what we call CHUs in the military, containerized housing. They targeted the housing area. They didn't target the airfield itself. Those strategic missiles targeted the housing area and ended up killing 4 of our troops. So for the President of the United States to go on and just wave off the impact of enemy intelligence, wave off the targeting by his friends, Putin and Z, is disgusting. Here, this is just him just asked yesterday.
And you said today that Russia and China are not helping. Earlier this week, the War Secretary Hegseth said that they are enabling. So what is the difference?
Well, I don't know that they're enabling. I mean, I will tell you that President Xi said he will not partake, and President Putin said the same thing. I think, I trust them. They've had a long-term relationship. There could be some things they do, but thus far, at least, it has not been major. I don't think they'd want to have me disappointed.
Don't want to have me disappointed. Soldiers are dying. Okay. And Trump cannot let go of his friendship with our enemies. But the fact is, the incompetence and the narcissism and the stupidity is endangering the lives of our troops. Our sons and daughters, mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters are overseas right now. And the faces of those 4 young men and women that died, and they were all young, doesn't impact this president in any way. And that's why I want to talk about presidential history, the impact of this war. We've got an incredible guest to put this all in perspective. This is On Democracy, folks. We put things in perspective of what you're watching, put them in historical context, and what it means for today's politics. So when I got the pitch that Allan Lichtman wanted to join the show, I was like, heck yes. And so he's got a new book coming out. As always, this is On Democracy with FP Wellman. I am FP Wellman, Fred Wellman, your host every week here, Friday night on the My Such Network. We're getting started a little bit serious this time. I hope you'll hit like, I hope you'll hit subscribe. I hope you share this with your friends while we're going live or where you're not. I hope you're watching this weekend because this is an important conversation about what our country faces with leadership like Donald J. Trump as we face the midterms. So to put it all in perspective, that's why you're here on Democracy on Friday nights. So let's get on the show right now. Oh, welcome. Right back. I'm still Fred Wellman. I was 15, 20, 30 seconds ago. I'm so glad to have you guys here on a Friday night. Talk about this important issue. We're talking about one of the biggest foreign policy stories facing the United States, probably in a decade, believe it or not. I mean, this is very serious stuff, and there's no way out. We find again and again that news conference, Trump is trapped. News is coming out this week that he's raging at his staff because there really is no good option at this point. Trump led us into a war, and Hegseth led us into a war, completely oblivious to the idea that the enemy could actually have a vote. And they have. It's one of the first things you learn in military 101, all right? And when I was a West Point cadet, is that every good plan never survives first contact with the enemy. And this wasn't even a good plan. So let's talk about that. Let's put this in the perspective. This is just a foreign policy question. It's a democratic accountability question. Because the other side, we've got a United States Congress, which I call the Republican doormat Congress, which is completely absconded from their duties and blinded the Constitution. I want to add a little thing before we get started. Those 4 deaths in that strike I showed you, they took those off the list of deaths in the Iran conflict because it was a ceasefire. Did that look like a ceasefire to you? So our service members aren't being counted as part of epic fury, where the goddamn name is today, because there was a ceasefire. Like there's a pause button on the Constitution or the War Powers Act. So we're going to put somebody on the show who actually understands the history of it all. It's Dr. Allan Lichtman. Professor Lichtman spent decades studying the presidency, American elections, and the forces that shape our democracy. He's got a new book coming out about great American presidents. I think you'll be surprised where Donald Trump falls on that. So I'd love to welcome him. Professor Lichtman, welcome to the show. Glad to have you here, sir.
Great pleasure. And I do want to put all of this into some historical perspective and show how it ties in to my new book, Great American Presidents, of which Trump is not one, let me tell you. And if you really want to explain what's going on in the Iraq War, my book has a special bonus, Lichtman's 10 Keys to Presidential Greatness. And I will show you how on these keys, it explains why Trump's Iran war policies are such a disaster as compared to what other presidents have done. But let me start you out with just a couple.
I was going to say, give me the top line, sir.
Approval, 5 months into the war in Iran, about 1/3 of Americans approve. Let me compare that to 2 other, quote, disastrous wars, but you had an early rally around the flag effect, which you do not have here. Both Vietnam and Iraq at this point in the wars had over 60% approval. This 1/3 approval is unique in the modern history of the country. And my book explains exactly why, according to the 10 keys to presidential greatness. Let me go over.
Pull me pull
Yeah.
one out for me. And that's what I want to look for you, sir. Is like, a lot of folks, as I said, this is a historic failure. It's a diplomatic failure. But I think people lose perspective of just how bad this is. I think when you're down in it, it's hard to say, isn't it? So, yeah, I'd love to hear like some of the keys you're seeing.
Yeah. So as I said, unheard of not to have a rally around the flag effect. Unheard of to have 1/3 approval 5 months into a war. That's 30 points below even Vietnam and Iraq. And my 10 keys to the presidency explains his failure. My first key is called the crisis key. And this is in my book. You can do it yourself. The crisis key. Great presidents are forged in existential crisis and rise to national challenges. Teddy Roosevelt once said, I was kind of sad I didn't have a war on my watch because great presidents are tested and forged in war. And we see Trump an utter failure on the crisis key. He never rose to the challenge of the war, and the war was misbegotten from the start because it didn't have a clear purpose, didn't have a strategy behind it. He and Hegseth simply believed that you can achieve your objectives with death and destruction. As morally horrible as that is, it is also strategically horrible. And that leads to key number 3, another abject failure, the moral vision key. Articulate a moral purpose that links policy to freedom, equality, dignity, or justice. You might as well just laugh here.
Well, and he's talked a lot too about the financial. I mean, instead of talking about the moral impact or the strategic reason we're doing this, he constantly talks about the financial. We're going to make a lot of money on oil.
He wants the oil, right?
Well, he wants the oil. He talks about how all the boats are coming to America now. It's like it just seems like Trump always defaults to a financial backbone and never a moral, strategic one, doesn't he?
Exactly. Follow the money is something I always say. And if you follow the money, you understand Trump. So a complete absence of any kind of moral vision. Even as disastrous as Vietnam and Iraq was, at least early on, the presidents did try to articulate a moral vision. Completely absent for Donald Trump. And here's maybe the most important one, my key number 10, the adaptability key. They adjust to changing circumstances, revise judgments, and change course without losing purpose. Donald Trump is the least adaptable president, maybe in the history of the country, that he is unable to change course. He is unable to adapt. He is so rigid and so ignorant of history and so ignorant of the world situation, epitomized by what you showed. They couldn't even label the countries of Africa correctly. How are they going to adapt to the inevitable, as you point out as a veteran, the inevitable challenges and changes in a war? There's an old Jewish proverb that I love. Man plans, God laughs. You have to be adaptable. And Donald Trump is so rigid that he has not adapted to any of the challenges. So, not rising to a crisis, no moral vision, no adaptability. That explains historically why this war is such a unique failure this early on. And what makes it even worse is what are we now fighting for? What are we now killing and destroying for? We're trying to get back to where we were before we started this war.
Before we started. Yep.
No one's talking regime change.
One thing I did want to bring into it was good presidents also surround themselves with competent people, right? Like we if you remember Lincoln,
Exactly.
of course, it's the team of rivals. Even Trump 1 had what we used to call the adults in the room, right? With that this national security staff was mostly competent, but instead this president surrounded themselves with sycophants who glaze him constantly. I mean, like it's nauseating to watch how they all kind of and Hegseth is the worst example of that. I mean, can you put that in perspective? I mean, have you ever seen a presidency that has surrounded themselves with such incompetence and people who well above their station in life and their incompetence. How does
You know,
that
people
frame that?
point to the worst cabinet in history, going all the way back to the 1920s, the Warren Harding cabinet. That cabinet featured Albert Fall, the Secretary of the Interior, who accepted bribes to open up our oil reserves to private oil men and was the first cabinet member to go to jail. And he had an attorney general who was very dubious as well. But that cabinet also had some outstanding figures as well. You know, Herbert Hoover as a Secretary of Commerce, Charles Evan Hughes in the cabinet. There are no such cabinet members for Donald Trump. He has replicated the worst elements of the Harding cabinet and put it across the board in his cabinet picks. You know, Harding was denounced roundly and rightly so, along with some outstanding appointees for appointing cronies. They're all cronies for
Right.
Trump. They are the worst cabinet overall in the history of the country. You know, the only one who seemed, you know, to be a decent pick was Marco Rubio. The only one in the whole cabinet, and he's turned out to be no better than the other sycophants. Pete Hegseth, not even close. The worst Secretary of Defense we've ever had. A guy who has no sense of what his job is really all about, who thinks
Right.
his job is just to cause death and destruction. We never had a cabinet member so reveling in death and destruction just for its own sake. RFK Jr., a guy in charge of science who is the epitome of quack science. Todd Blanche, the guy he wants to put in permanently as head of the DOJ as Attorney General. You know, a total sycophant doing nothing but carrying water for Donald Trump and totally mishandling the release of the Epstein files and also tremendous incompetence in his administration. This is something we have never seen before in the history of the country, including as you Trump's first term. So you have a president who knows nothing about history, who has no moral purpose, handle crises, who can't be adaptable, and you put him together with a cabinet that's not only incompetent, but a cabinet that's dangerous, like RFK Jr. endangering our health, Pete Hegseth blundering us into war just for death and destruction. And by the way, what was it on day one of the war? They were so incompetent, they were using old plans. And according to independent analysis, they hit a school and may have killed as many as 150 schoolgirls. And guess what? They're still investigating. We're investigating. I guarantee you, bet your farm, we're never going to hear the results of that investigation.
And something I say a lot, and then we'll break for commercial, is, you know, I was a soldier for 22 years. I led men in combat, to include, I was a scout for Apaches who, you know, rained a lot of death and destruction on our enemies. And I talk often of they think they're doing a good thing by covering this up, right? Like they're protecting the troops and all. But I talk about a lot is if you've been in the service, you know that the minute the news came out that would hit a school, every missileer, every person who hit a button that night, every person who typed in the coordinates or copy and paste the coordinates for these strikes, checked their data set. And they went into their data set and said, was that my target? So right now, there's probably a 23-year-old kid or something, a man or woman, probably a sailor, probably a low-ranking one, who's the person that pushed that button. And they know. And so covering it up doesn't do them any favors, right? They need to know, that young sailor needs to know, was it bad intelligence? Was it fat-fingered, a 1 for a 2? Is it, you know what I'm saying? And so that's why I, as a veteran of combat, 4 times in combat, I, as a veteran who's seen what mistakes lead to, is so appalled by the lack of interest whatsoever in holding themselves accountable, because we hold ourselves accountable so we don't make the same mistake twice.
Absolutely. That's why in my book, I rank Trump right at the bottom of presidents, maybe hitting one, unlikely 2 on my 10-point scale. But here's what you got to understand about Donald Trump and why this cover up of this horrible tragedy is so typical. Number one, Trump cares about no one but himself. Number two, Trump has no shame. No matter what he does, it doesn't matter. You can't shame him. Number three, Trump never, ever admits to anything. I trace this all the way back to the early 1970s when he was caught discriminating against minorities by the Justice Department in his real estate company. He hired Roy Cohen, the notorious attorney for Joe McCarthy, and their MO was admit nothing, attack, obstruct, deflect, and it worked. And that's been his MO ever since. Fourth point, always project your own failures on someone else. So if you understand those four elements, the core, and of course, number five, which we've been talking about, it's all about the money. If you understand those core elements, you'll understand the disaster of the Iraq War in historical perspective. We've never had a president so deficient on the keys of presidential greatness.
So let's pause there for our sponsor. And what I want to do, I want to come back. I want to talk about the other two keys of government, right? We have a courts and we have two other branches of government. I want to put that in perspective too. So we'll just pause right now, talk to our sponsors. We'll be right back. Hey, look, I have an unhealthy amount of pictures of my cat Shugs. I admit it freely. I mean, look at her. Here she is recharging in the sun because if she doesn't, her battery dies very quickly and we lose her. So I like to keep taking pictures of her, and that's why we feed her Smalls. Smalls is fresh, human grade cat food that does so much more than just feed your cat. It helps them live a full and frankly healthier, happier life. Now, most cat food out there is made with meat byproducts, cheap fillers, artificial ingredients, basically stuff that is not great for your cat at all. And the big pet food does this because it's cheaper to make. But what they save on cost, you and your cat are paying for with their health. And Smalls is different. Their fresh recipes are made with at least 80% animal protein, and they're gently cooked to retain all their nutrients and flavor. They never add fillers or artificial ingredients. And their food is so healthy that 80% of cat parents who use it say that after feeding Smalls, their cats have better digestion, a softer and shinier coat, and more energy to play. And it's simple. There's a simple reason why. It's actually really good for your cat. So your cat's health and longevity starts with what they eat. So try Smalls. Get 60% off your cat's first order, plus free shipping, free treats for life when you go to smalls.com/Fred. As an On Democracy listener, you get this deal for a limited time and love you to take advantage. So last time, at 60% off your first order, plus free shipping and free treats for life when you head to smalls.com/Fred. Check it out. Shugs appreciates it. I want to keep taking pictures of. I hope you will too. Thanks. And we're back. So I teased it before the break. You know, Congress has a role in all of this, right, sir? I mean,
Yes.
Usually even bad presidents have checks. In Trump 1, there was checks on his power, but this Republican, I call it colloquially the Republican doormat Congress. I tell you, I'm a bit of a fan of Harry Truman. I'm here in Missouri, as you know, and here in Missouri, obviously, I grew up on Harry Truman.
The do nothing Congress, right? Yes.
There you go. You beat me to it, right?
Do nothing Congress.
There you go. The do nothing Congress. But we've got worse. We've got the Republican doormat Congress. Yeah, they just lay there to get walked back and forth on, and people wipe their feet on as they go by. What role does Congress have to play in all this too? I mean, it makes it even worse, doesn't it?
Yes, I'll put that in historical perspective as well. I have another book which is already out. I have a book a year. I have a book for everything. Any topic, I have a book for it. This one is called Conservative at the Core, A New History of American Conservatism. Notre Dame University Press. It was nominated for the Indie Book of the Year. And what it does, it traces 100 years of American conservatism to show that Donald Trump, contrary to what some old liners like Bill Kristol, have to say, is not an aberration. He's not a hijacking of American conservatism. He is the culmination of American conservatism. And Congress, it's the first branch of government, not the second. And it is obviously, as devised by our framers, designed to provide a fundamental check so we don't have a tyrannical executive, which was the great fear of the framers. And, the conventional wisdom, once again, is wrong. Not entirely, but mostly. They say, oh, well, Congress is this doormat. They give in because they're afraid of Trump. That's true, but that's not the real problem. Once you understand that Trump is the culmination, not the aberration, you understand the reason Congress just bends over continually for Trump is that they agree with him. It's not like, oh, we think he's all wrong. He's not a real conservative, but we're for. No, they agree with him. They're in sync with this culmination of American conservatism, which of course has nothing to do with what conservatives tell you they're about. Limited government, right? ICE terrorizing our communities, anti-abortion laws, people, law in our bedroom, fiscal responsibility, Trump blowing one of the biggest holes in the deficit, free enterprise, tariffs, the biggest enemy of free enterprise.
Buying stakes in
Nothing to do with
companies.
any of that.
We just found out yesterday that quietly the Commerce Department bought stakes in 7 more corporations. So we are a major stakeholder in multiple private corporations now for the first time.
Exactly. Forget free enterprise. Forget all these things that they claim to stand for. What they really stand for is private, not free enterprise, pro-business, tax breaks, subsidies, friendly regulations, and their own narrow, cramped view of traditional Christian teachings. Mike Johnson says, you want to know what my policy is? Read the Bible. Well, I have read the Bible. And their policies are at the most remote fringes of the teachings of Jesus. Do you really think the teachings of Jesus are all about transgender people, homosexuality, abortion, things that doesn't even talk about, or by the most remote inference? Overwhelmingly, what Jesus teaches us is beware of wealth and greed. It's easier for a camel to go through an eye of a needle than it is for a rich man to go to heaven. Jesus teaches us to care for the poor, care for the sojourner. Jesus teaches us to be faithful to the truth. That's the core of Jesus' teaching, which has nothing to do with the claims being made, by the right wing. Oh, we're faithful to the Bible.
Yeah, and it's terrifying the impact that has on average Americans and life in general. Just today here in Missouri, we found out that a couple that had lived here, the wife was on an asylum, the husband was here. They grabbed the husband on his way to work, deported him. She couldn't raise the kids by herself, so she went to Guatemala. They were found murdered in a field in Guatemala with their baby sitting next to them, and that's horrifying. And then what was horrifying to me was that some of the comments for people who you look at their profiles on the internet and they're a conservative Christian, and they're like, well, they broke the law. It's like a young couple being murdered next to their children is, well, I mean, I don't remember any of my in the catechism growing up in Catholic church here that just because somebody here was on they broke the civil regulations that they deserve to be murdered in the field next to their children. It's just somewhere along the line, it feels like some of our fellow Americans have lost their moral compasses in a very scary way.
Talk about fidelity to the truth. Donald Trump has claimed that this crackdown, which is terrorizing our communities, is to get rid of the worst, the killers, the murderers, the rapists. Well, let me give you a couple of statistics. Number one, undocumented immigrants have the lowest rate of crime of any group, much lower than Native Americans. Study after study shows that, including a study by the Department of Justice, National Institute of Justice, which Donald Trump has scrubbed from their website so no one can see it. Number two, they are not arresting, detaining, and deporting serious criminals. The Track Institute at Syracuse University points out that over 70% of those picked up by ICE have no criminal conviction of any kind at all. And of the remaining, most of them have convictions for minor offenses like minor traffic offenses. Serious criminals are a minuscule proportion of those arrested and detained by ICE and then stuck in these horrible, unhealthy, dangerous facilities where the death rate has soared under Donald Trump as compared to the Biden administration.
It's just terrifying. It's just absolutely terrifying. So I guess circling back to the beginning of this conversation with the Iran war, and now we've got the
Yes.
midterms coming up, right? So
Yes.
do you think voters in your studies will evaluate this as a foreign policy issue, an economic issue, president's leader? I mean, how do you think this will affect the midterms?
I think it's going to have a very negative effect for Republicans. Because this is an all-encompassing issue. It's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
just
That's one,
an
right?
issue of a horribly immoral, destructive, unpopular war. That's a piece of it. 2/3 almost of Americans oppose the war just a
Right.
few months in. That's unheard of historically.
Yeah.
But it goes beyond that because the war has tremendous reverberations on the world and the American economy. We just saw economic growth coming in well below expectations. And the economists say the war is a drag on the overall economy, just 1.5%. And I would bet it's going to even be revised downward because they always revise these preliminary numbers. And of course, inflation, he blames everything on Biden. Well, inflation is now above what it was in the last year of Biden. It's not just gas prices, it's prices across the board. So you have this kind of a perfect storm hitting Republicans. And we've seen the generic polls, Democrats up by 6 to 8 points in terms of would you prefer to elect a Democrat or Republican in the midterms. But those understate the Democratic advantage. Let me give you two other statistics. Number one, we've had a lot of elections, right? We have the off-year elections in 2025, like governors in Virginia. Democrats have far outperformed the polls, sometimes by as much as 10 points. Secondly, the critical thing to look at in the polls, which is often overlooked, is the enthusiasm gap.
Yeah.
There's
There you
a
go.
20-point Democratic advantage among those enthusiastic to vote.
Yep. I think that's key. We're seeing that overwhelming the primaries. I mean, we're seeing huge turnout, record turnout amongst Democratic voters. And I've also seen, I talked to a colleague of mine who said that when they looked at the exit polls from the New Jersey governor's election, there was more people who called themselves independents in the exit polls than exist on paper in New Jersey. And what that means is, they're probably Republicans who said, I'm an independent now, and they voted for Mikey. And so you're seeing that. I think we're seeing that across the country. Like here in Missouri, you pick your party ballot. We're all looking forward to Tuesday's primary here to see what that data tells us about Missouri's voting pattern. And it's such a key bellwether state. Even still, like how many people will pull a Democrat ticket instead of a Republican ballot, and where that leads us is really going to be one of our big things. There's so much data showing that there's frustration. And I want to circle back, and I'll let you go, is you're right. I mean, typically a war, look, if it's Venezuela, it didn't cause international crisis, but closing the Straits of Hormuz, causing the oil to fucking stop Dutch, causing attacks on our allies without any recourse. This is so much more than your typical little small regional conflict. This is one that's causing global economic impact that is hurting everyday Americans. I hear it everywhere I go.
Yeah, it's all in my book. And let
There
me
you go.
give you another historical perspective on this.
Great.
Look what happened when the Iraq War and the Vietnam War went sour. As I said, there was early on support. But as I note in my book here, who was sponsoring the Iraq War in 2006, gave us Nancy Pelosi, right? Democrats had a big midterm advantage. Look what happened if you want to go either further back in the Vietnam War, in the midterms of 1966, when the war began to go sour and the Democrats took a big hit in the midterm elections of 1966. And even those wars, as you say, didn't have the same kind of reverberating effect on the national and the American economy. So this is why, and this keeps me up at night, and I shouldn't be up at night at my age.
Almost 80, for God's sake.
Almost 80. I'm as old as Trump, and I think I look a little
I
better.
wish I was. I think you do too.
But here's what keeps you up at night. Trump, he doesn't know a lot of things, but he knows politics. He knows he's in for a pasting. That's why I am so fearful that he is going to do something to interfere with these elections. He tried to prepare us for it with his totally lying, totally misleading speech on election integrity. I want to
Yeah.
point out one thing to your audience that people have missed. For 6 years, he's saying the election of 2020 was stolen from me, right? I won in a landslide and it was stolen. So this speech was his opportunity for the American people to come up with really hard, powerful evidence proving the election was stolen. What did he come up with? One thing, a few thousand phony registrations in Michigan, a state that Biden won by over 150,000 votes, and they were caught. None of those fraudulent registrations led to a fraudulent vote. So after 6 years of saying all these fraudulent votes stole the election from me, in his big address to the nation, he couldn't point to one, not one fraudulent vote.
Yep. Yep. And then the mysterious Chinese interference, which is
Oh
weird
my
because
God.
you're
Yes.
buddies, right? I make up your
Right.
mind. Are we enemies or friends? I mean, we started this
Right.
show. It's probably a great place to wrap is go full circles. He's saying his friend Xi won't do that, but then he's saying he did it. It just can't seem to make up his mind who our friends and enemy are, whatever the moment fits. Because in Donald Trump's world, that's all he thinks about is right now. It's almost like the goldfish memory from Ted Lasso. 10
Yeah.
seconds
But the
memory, right?
scary thing is he is going to try to do everything in his power. He's already gone to the Supreme Court to try to get them to approve his totally unconstitutional intervention in mail-in ballots. The Constitution, which I'm sure Trump has never read, leaves the administration of elections to the states with a role for Congress to pass laws like the Voting Rights Act or the Help America Vote Act, but no role for the executive.
Yep. Well, and then the most important question, so I can't, we could talk all day, but the
Yes.
most important question I have for you is you need to tell us about what you're doing this weekend because I understand you're running the Maryland Senior Olympics.
Right.
At
I am a
+80.
senior Olympian. I went in last year to the National Senior Olympics, and tomorrow I am running in the qualifier, the Maryland Senior Olympics. I am running in the 75 to 79 age group. I'm at the end of the age group. I'm
Yep.
79, and I'm running the 1500 meter and the 800 meter race.
I don't run that far unless I'm being chased by a bear. Even if I was being chased by a bear, I'd probably negotiate with the bear before I started running.
And by the way, my
So
wife
God bless
is
you.
my wife is a senior Olympian too, and she won a silver medal last year in powerlifting. So I've got to be very careful around the house.
With that note, last thing, where can they find the book and when?
All right.
And get people prepped for that. That's the most important thing here.
Yeah, the book is out, not out yet. It's published September 22nd, but it is available for pre-order. And it really helps us if you would pre-order the book. You can pre-order it on Amazon or any outlet of your choice. Pre-ordering really makes a big difference. And when you get the book, you will get Lichtman's Do-It-Yourself 10 Keys to the Presidency. And
I can't wait.
please check into my live show every Tuesday and Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern at Allan Lichtman YouTube. Thank you for
There you
this
go.
opportunity, Fred. It's been a great talk.
I enjoyed having you, sir. It's been a joy. I've been a fan for a long time. I told my fiance I didn't want to fanboy out because I love your work. And just thank you so much for joining us today. It's such an informative interview. But thank you for joining us. And I guess good luck with the book. We'll see you soon, sir. See you on the TV.
Take care.
Wow, I can talk to Dr. Lichtman. I can talk to Dr. Lichtman all day long. I was a fan. You know, we hung over his stuff when I was at the Lincoln Project. Obviously, if you remember, he has the 13 keys to the presidency, and he's been predicting who's going to win the presidency for a long time, much to many people's chagrin, because he always gets it right. And it is a fascinating conversation. I recommend you check that out. Definitely pre-order that book and definitely pay attention. And my God, he's 79 years old. I can't keep up with him. So speaking of that, of getting old in America and being healthy, I want to highlight one. He did mention RFK Jr. And I want to kind of highlight where we are in this whole thing. And we're going to highlight it through the world of food right now, because the fact is, it is bad, folks. You know this. I don't have to tell you. The cost of food is through the roof. It's not just eggs. Everything. There are charts showing it. We've got the highest increase in food costs in the last 6 to 10 years. This isn't just a thing. You know, inflation will fool you. Inflation will measure what's happening now. And I think for us in America, we've gotten so used to just paying attention to the latest number. Well, this month it was high, but last month it was low. It always goes up. Prices don't go down. Okay. Steak is not going to go down dramatically. I'm sorry to say it, that we are in a lifetime shift where the cost of living has not kept up, or as I should say, has increased, but wages have not. We have got a gap growing. And that's the root of everything, folks. Look, you're going to hear we get through to the midterms. Oh, well, inflation's down, inflation's up. Look, inflation's up and down all the time, but it never really goes down. The prices don't go away. And until you about hear wage growth, it's never going to get better. So let's put food and wage growth together. And I want you to watch this extremely monstrous conversation that you've seen in the show before July 4th, from Republican Congressman Troy Nehls, who is, in my opinion, one of the shittiest people on earth.
House Republicans make the case that you're fighting for affordability when you go back to your districts.
Affordability? What are you talking about?
Well, affordability is the
I'm
big.
going to go there tomorrow. over the 4th. I'm going to get me a couple big lobster tails. I'm going to get me some nice ribeyes. I'm going to sit in my backyard with my family, my neighbors. And we're going to be enjoying the 4th, celebrating 250 years, the birthday. We're going to be celebrating the greatest president in my lifetime, Donald J. Trump. Maybe watch some fireworks. Won't be up here. It's going to be too hot, right? And I'm in bed at 11 o'clock. I heard the fireworks ain't going off till 11 o'clock Eastern on the 4th of July. I probably have to sleep through that one.
He goes on from there, if you remember, when he's asked by another reporter, what about the 65% of Americans who say they can't afford to, live paycheck to paycheck? And he says, they should work harder like me. He's a congressman. Now, why do I bring that up again? Because this week, RFK Jr. went on his tour about eating healthy.
And this is true all over the country. There's a lot of good food at grocery stores that goes away. Most of the cheap cuts of meat are very expensive. If you buy a porterhouse steak or a steak, it is gonna set you back. You can buy liver or the cheaper cuts of steak that are very, very affordable.
Now, do you see where I'm going with this? Yeah. So while a congressman's talk about his lobster tails and ribeyes, we've got the Health and Human Services Secretary saying, hey, you should buy the toss-off stuff. Let's talk about the history. Do you guys ever know the term? Have you ever heard the term humble pie? You know where it comes from? So in the Middle Ages in England, when they butchered animals, deer specifically, in England, in Old English, the offal, the leftover parts, the liver, the intestines, the tongue, that was called offal, AOFFAL. And they would take it, or umble, actually, is what they in Old English, umble. And they'd they'd chop it up and cook it, put it in pies. And that's what they served the servants and the peasants. Humble pie, hence the term eating humble pie today. And I'd be willing to bet that RFK Jr., the scion of the Kennedy family, and a multi-millionaire at least, or Troy Nehls, who just works really hard, aren't eating any humble pie, but they want you to. I want you to think of that as you go into the midterms. I want you to think about that as you think about your vote. Here in Missouri, your vote is on Tuesday for the primary. Do you really want to elect any more people that are telling us to eat your humble pie and shut up about it? That, yep, we know the prices are too high if you eat the good stuff like us, but you should be happy because you can eat healthy with tongues and livers and the things that we don't want to eat. You're not going to find them at Michelin-starred restaurants, that's for damn sure, where they eat. They want you to shut up and eat your garbage and be happy. And that's where we are in the cycle of greed, where the top 10% now own almost literally all the major stock assets outside of IRAs and 401ks. That literally the top 20% accounts for 58% of all consumer spending. Our entire economy is driven by the top 20% who are living luxuriously, while the rest of us eat your liver, folks. Think about that when you go into that booth. I'm not even talking about party. If you're a member of Congress or their challenger thinks like Troy Nehls does, that you should eat your liver, you should vote them the hell out. So thanks for joining us. I'm going to eat mac and cheese probably and get back to work. In the meantime, you know where we are every Friday night right here on the Midas Touch Network. I appreciate you being with us here. You've got big decisions to make, folks. Get in the fight. That's what we're fighting. You heard it about Donald Trump administration. You heard about the Republican doormat Congress. You heard about the let them eat cake people. Now is the time for you to fight. You have a chance. We got to vote in overwhelming numbers because you're damn sure they're going to try and steal it. They sure are here in Missouri. Did you guys hear that here in Missouri, they redistricted? We got enough petition signatures to stop it, but the Secretary of State will not make a decision if we have enough signatures till the primary election day on Tuesday by law. No need to hurry. There's a very good chance Missourians are going to vote twice in their primaries because the smarmy Secretary of State decided he's going to be cute. They are trying to stop your vote. Don't let them. So with that, I'll see you next week. I'm Fred Wellman. Make sure you follow our Substack, fpwellman.substack.com, or check us out on all the social media networks. I'm at fpwellman or at fpwellmanofficial, one or the other somewhere. I'd love to have you join us. In the meantime, never forget what I say all the time, folks. We're not done yet. See you next week.